I don't think any other country has a more loyal group of former Peace Corps volunteers than Ethiopia.
I taught industrial art, mechanical drawing, and I started out very simple, and I had an object like, well, I had a cube. And so I drew on the chalkboard a cube, top view, front view, side view, and then 3/4 view. And they all copied it just great, you know, and I thought, well, these kids are pretty smart, they're really learning fast. So I brought in this cylinder. I said, okay, now I'm going to hold the cylinder up, and I drew the front view of the cylinder, which was rectangular. And so I'm going to let all of you draw the end view. So I held it up like that. I said, okay, I want all of you to draw the end view. What did I get? Every student in the room drew a square. Astonished me. They drew a square or a rectangle. And so I said, I don't understand. It's obviously a circle. Why did you draw a square? They said, but sir, you haven't given us that yet. And so they're learning by rote memorization. They're repeating exactly what we did on the board, and that was it. So I knew I was going to have to establish some kind of a thought process that was a little bit different in teaching, you know, mechanical drawing, because you have to look at hidden views. You have to have three-dimensional objects, have to draw them 3/4 view, and so forth. I think that was a little bit true in some of the other.
Yeah, I found out if you didn't say it in class, they wouldn't understand it. If you said it and then expect for them to figure out and put it on the test and give the answer, that would be impossible. You almost had to give what you had said in class. They could memorize everything you said. If you put it on the board, memorize it, put it on the test, they'd make 100. So it was a little bit different, even though that was my first job as teaching. And I soon found out that that's the way it had to be. And because once I had given a test, thinking that they understood, and almost nobody passed the test, and they really they thought it was my fault because I didn't give exactly what I had said in class. So it's different. Now they couldn't memorize, and that was it.
Well, as I think about Peace Corps training, there were 300 of us who got there. I think we were asking ourselves that. You know, looking at the different backgrounds of people who came in. Now, many people, most of the group, as I recall, were like myself, recent college graduates. But there were also older potential volunteers at that point who went, who had been in the teaching field for years. As a matter of fact, they were in their 50s and 60s. I think we had at that point the oldest Peace Corps volunteer in Peace Corps service. Forgotten her name, but they went into the teacher training institutes down in Harlem, for example. I think a lot of people were probably motivated the same thing I was motivated by, you know, the adventure, something new, different to do, and so forth. We were trying to figure out exactly, you know, who we were supposed to be as good volunteers, and there was what was called the selection out process, and the word would get around that so and so was, you know, under evaluation and so forth, and then there were the people who were, the term was selected out. So we would all say, "Oh, what's the difference between me and him or her? I don't know what it is," you know, because they were psychological evaluations. You know, are you really able to adjust and carry on and so forth? But I'm not sure we ever really decided what it was, or that after a certain point we worried very much more about it. But most of that group, as I say, I think we were 300, and it seems to me something like 280 to 85 went to Ethiopia. So that was sort of the way people fit together. And the training we had in 1964 was entirely in this country. It was at UCLA. Now, of course, the training, long time, is done part here and part in Ethiopia. So you also get that added, I think, that added factor of people who are going to adjust and handle the situation, people who can't. We didn't have that. It was done entirely by staff evaluation.
Well, we heard those rumors that we were suspected CIA agents. There was also another rumor going around that we were stealing Ethiopia's gold, that somehow we were digging gold and packaging it and sending it out of the country. And perhaps we were a little more sensitive to those rumors in Asmara because Cagnew Station was located in Asmara. But we had explicit direction from the Peace Corps that we were not to go on to the Cagnew Station base unless we were going to the hospital or going to the church for church services. In the 2 years that I was there, I went to Cagnew Station 2 times, and those 2 times were to get medicine at the hospital. And there were guards at the gate. And when I rode my bicycle up to the gate, I had to identify myself and say why I was going on the post, and that was it. If anybody in the Peace Corps was a CIA agent, I certainly didn't hear about it. And you know how people talk and how rumors circulate, and I never heard of anybody saying in any way that they heard that so-and-so might be working for the CIA. And in fact, it was President Kennedy's intention, to keep this as a people-to-people service organization and not have it penetrated or used by any other branch of the government for any other purposes. And I think most of the people who worked in the Peace Corps were young people. They had this ideal of a people-to-people service, and that's why they joined the Peace Corps. And if it had been perverted in any way, they would have been upset and resisted that kind of perversion.
Sargent Shriver, the chief of the Peace Corps, was the most fun to work with of anyone in my life, most inspiring, most creative and empowering. And I worked with him intensely during the campaign for the election of John Kennedy. Then I worked as his deputy in the talent search for the members of the cabinet and ambassadors. And then an inaugural parade, Kennedy turned to Sargent Shriver, his brother-in-law, and said, "Would you look at this idea of the Peace Corps that I proposed and recommend what we should do about it?" And Shriver called me up on the phone and said, "Well, we've got a new assignment. We've got to form a task force to plan this idea of the Peace Corps." And I naturally loved it, naturally for me, because I had actually been part of an international development placement association that young college students started along with Columbia University's teachers in East Africa. And it was placing young people in service and in teaching. And it was very hard to do on a scale, nonprofit scale. It was smaller and not backed by the government. But the bigger opportunity came with the Peace Corps. And so Shriver knew I loved it, but at the same time, Kennedy was under fire for not having enough people focused on civil rights. And he asked me to be his special assistant for civil rights in the White House. And it was an invitation I couldn't refuse, even though the thought of working with Shriver was, very tempting. But Sarge got a permission, Sargent Shriver, for me to go with him around the world to see if heads of state would invite the Peace Corps. And I had a great 3 weeks doing that. And then about a year later, Sarge said, we've got this request from Haile Selassie, the Emperor of Ethiopia, for, I think it was 500 Peace Corps teachers to come to Ethiopia to help expand the secondary school system and have enough students coming for the new university to fill the new university. And also the president of Togo and of Malawi, then called Nyasaland, had sent letters saying they wanted the Peace Corps. And so Sargent Shriver got permission for me to go to those 3 countries and negotiate whether we should go ahead in those countries. And I fell in love with Ethiopia. Togo was a great little adventure on West Africa. Nyasaland, before it became Malawi, was this land of 10,000 lakes. And then Ethiopia with its mountains and its people and its history, and the best climate I think I've ever lived in.
Now, as far as what motivated me when I, first heard about the Peace Corps from President Kennedy, it sort of blew over my head. Not until during the course of that year, we had a speaker to come to the college and talk about some of the things you could do besides the normal thing. I believe this person had been overseas and traveled, and she said, maybe this is something you should look into. I don't know if she was recruiting for the Peace Corps, but she mentioned the Peace Corps. And right then, I said, well, this is something I could do. As well as helping other people, I could learn about other people, learn about other countries, and get to travel. So that sort of motivated me. And so when I walked out of the meeting, I had a sister also. We both walked out and said, this is something we need to do. So we signed up, took the test for the Peace Corps. They invited us to training, and so we had been accepted. Finally, we told our parents that going this far to Africa to work after college. Well, as most parents, they didn't want us to do it. But, we said, what else to do? So we said, we're going to do it anyway. Well, going away for 2 years, that's something that, it's something to think about. Going away for 2 years, that far from home. But in other words, that's what we wanted to do. So we continued, and we got accepted for the Peace Corps. So we went to Ethiopia.
What motivated me to join the Peace Corps was maybe several things. One was the fact that I had spent a year working on a master's program at the University of Tulsa in fine arts, and majoring in painting. And I was interested in going overseas to maybe do some thesis work, and it was the early beginning of the civil rights movement, and I was interested in that, and I was interested in Africa. So there happened to be a Peace Corps rep at the University of Tulsa at the time, and they suggested that I maybe apply for a program, might be able to go to Africa. So I thought, well, that's an interesting idea. I did apply. I hate to say this, I was accepted to Ethiopia, and I thought, rats, I wanted to go to Africa. A little bit like Al. So my geography wasn't very good back then. So I looked it up, and it was right in the middle of East Africa, and I thought, fantastic, So that's what got me in the Peace Corps. And of course, I was aware of Kennedy's program. It was very interesting to me. And I went to Georgetown, and that was kind of exciting because I really hadn't been out of Oklahoma and Arkansas at the time. So got to go to Georgetown and got accepted to the program, and they gave us like 5 days to go home and pack for 2 years. And I thought, oh my God, I'm not sure I can do that. And I thought, I wonder if I'm making a mistake. People at the airport looked a little threatening, and I thought, oh, I don't know about this. Got to Addis Ababa, and the first week I got deathly sick. Montezuma's revenge got me, and So I thought, I think I made a mistake. So, but after that, everything picked up. We got to this Tewahade McCunnan school, which was ran by French Canadians, and that was a very interesting program. Got to teach something that I liked, and students and faculty were very friendly. So everything got better and picked up, and as a result, after 2 years, both Al and I were ready to stay for a third year.
I was in Haile Selassie Secondary School, which was on the road to Dessie, just on the edge of Addis Ababa. It was, I can tell you this distinctly, I remember, it was half an hour's walk beyond the end of the number 10 bus line in Shola. You'd ride the bus to Shola, which was where the British Embassy was, you'd get off, and you walked. The taxis didn't want to go out there, so, and we walked it many times back and forth. Sometimes I'm going into Mercato and Addis to buy groceries, vegetables, and that kind of thing. So you'd be carrying these kinds of things along the road. But it was a beautiful walk because it was at that point, not like now, open country, just beyond Shola, and it was so typically Ethiopia because it was the highlands, the Barzaf swaying in the breeze and so forth. And sometimes we weren't so happy having to walk it because we were carrying things, but it was good exercise, and the road got paved our first year, so it was a paved road. We didn't get buried in dust and so forth the way it would have been for the first couple groups of volunteers. But it was a very pleasant walk, and I had a wonderful house to live in out at Kota Bay, and it was a very good school. It was a pleasured school because we had facilities that a lot of other volunteers, I found out later, did not have. I had very good students. We had materials. We managed finally to persuade Otto Belli to unlock the storeroom and give us the textbooks that were in there. And I remember using those in my English class. I later taught history as well in the 11th and 12th grade. But the school, it was a boarding school. It was the last of the boarding schools in the empire. So that meant that when the emperor traveled places within the country, but also further into East Africa, when he offered fellowships, scholarships to students to study in Ethiopia, they came to our school. So my classroom, those classrooms had a large or complete cross-section of Ethiopian society. I mean, I had students from Eritrea, I had them from the north of the country, wherever, Gondar, Wollo, and so forth. I had students from the south of the country. I had students who were, well, one of them was named Mordecai Duck. You don't forget a name like that. He was probably Nuer or Anuak from clear down on the Sudan border and so forth. And then I had some students from East Africa, and one from what was then Southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and so forth. They were in my classrooms.
At this time, I don't remember what our rent was. We had a housing allowance from the Peace Corps, and we could spend